I was born and raised here in Newcastle, and while I'm currently based in America for work, my heart very much remains here on Tyneside. So it's a real honor that I can share with you today a remarkable piece of local history that has global relevance and deserves to be heard. This is a story about a small group of Geordie housewives led by this woman, Jennie Shearan, and how they banded together and fought back against government incompetence and a London-based corporation seeking to impose its will on their seemingly powerless community. This is about how David took on Goliath and changed the face of the Northeast for the better. So let's start with some context. Not far from where we're gathered today, just a little further east along the banks of the River Tyne, are the adjacent towns of Hebburn and Jarrow. Jarrow, during the late 1800s, enjoyed some serious boom times. During the heyday of the Industrial Revolution, Jarrow became the largest shipbuilding center in the country, supporting thousands of jobs. However, by the 1930s, that work had dwindled away as shipbuilding moved to other parts of the world. A famous essay was written on Jarrow during this period, and it was entitled "The Town That Was Murdered." The situation was desperate, and in 1936, 200 hungry men marched down from Jarrow to London. Their efforts stimulated government action, and later that year, Monkton Coke Works was built in the nearby town of Hebburn. The facility was a striking symbol that the government was taking action to provide much-needed employment in the area. A quick word on coke. Coke is an environmentally noble fuel in so much as it is smokeless when burned. Unfortunately, converting coal into coke is an incredibly dirty and polluting process. Thankfully, though, at Monkton Coke Works, there was no serious threat to human health due to its remote location. It continued to operate throughout World War II. By the end of the war, millions of people had been killed and houses throughout the country destroyed. One area that the government selected for social housing construction was in the next-door town of Hebburn. This is Jennie Shearan with her first daughter, Barbara. At the time, social housing had been built in nearby Hebburn, and the Shearans were one of the families invited to move into these houses. Like all the incoming residents, the Shearans were delighted with their brand new home. However, they were also concerned about its proximity to the coke works. Nevertheless, they were all assured that the coke works would soon be closing down. Tragically, though, this promise was untrue. The facility quickly doubled in size, and it soon became a monster, manufacturing 600,000 tons of coke a year. Each time the residents stepped outside their home, they were confronted with the horror of appalling levels of hazardous sulphur dioxide and all-pervading soot, horrendous smells, and incessant noise from a coking plant that was operating 24 hours a day, 364 days a year. Unbelievably, in 1964, a second estate was built, with many schools not even 1 mile away. This is homemade footage from Jennie, and this is Jennie outside her home with her daughter, Barbara. Jennie saw a massive injustice, and she was deeply concerned about the health impacts that were jeopardizing the quality of life of the residents. Indeed, one of the streets bordering the coke works was referred to as Death Row by the locals. This was the view from Jennie's bedroom at night. The residents' dream had become a living nightmare. The people of Monkton Lane Estate had been betrayed. Jennie felt that by entering into the world of politics, she could do something about the issue. She was an effective counselor And among many other achievements, she secured rent rebates for the locals living close to the coke works. Within a decade, she had been elected to be the only ever female chairman of Tyne and Wear County Council. She was a woman in a man's world. But in her rise through the local political system, she realized that she could not effect significant change for the matter that she cared the most about, which was the pollution in her town. In 1987, the year that she retired from politics, British Coal put forward planning permission for a power station to be built at the site of Monkton Coke Works. Jennie realized that unless she took the initiative and stood up to British Coal, that the plant would continue to expand and make this hellhole even worse for the residents. And it was at this moment that she decided to form the Hebburn Residents Action Group. These are Hebburn women to be proud of. They had a lot going against them in their battle to take on as immense an institution as British Coal. They were not scholars, they had no access to finances or even office equipment. They were middle-aged Geordie housewives trying to confront a male-dominated industry that was being managed hundreds of miles from their home. They were going to need to be irrepressible and innovative if they even had a chance of being heard. Their first move was to present a petition containing signatures of over 1,000 residents that was presented to South Tyneside Council, underlining their resistance to the proposed power station. In their bid to get this matter urgently addressed, they wrote to several influential members of society, from the Queen to the Prime Minister, asking for support. And leading the charge every step of the way was Jennie. The communication and media landscape was so different to today. With no Google, all their research had to be done in the library. All their petitions and letters had to be printed and posted because there was no email. The only way to call was to incur costly phone bills because there was no WhatsApp or FaceTime. And the regional press would need to play a key role in spreading their message because there was no social media. One particularly bold move was their demonstration around Monkton Coke Works. Jennie would often say that you can move mountains with people power. And this demonstration represented a real turning point for the action group. British Coal by now had become aware of the residents, but they refused to back down in their desire to build a power station. And it's thanks to the tireless efforts of these grassroots activists in raising awareness of the issue that the government called for a public inquiry, which they only do for the most high profile of cases in the country. A local solicitor offered his services pro bono for the action group, and Jennie Shearan, therefore, would come to represent the community at South Shields Town Hall. Let's listen to Jennie in her own words.
Comes a time when you live in a community that enough is enough. And when you live in an environment that has smoke, filth, noise, you name it, we have to put up with it. And you're supposed to live there and do nothing about it. You phone to the management, you complain to the local council, and nothing. So at last the residents said it was time they took the matter into their own hands to try to clean up the environment. Mostly because of the pollution that's coming out of Monkton Coke Works at the present time. Yesterday, the children from St. Joseph's was doing a cross-country run around Monkton Coke Works. Now, while they were running, I looked out of my window, and it had to be seen to be believed, the filth, the muck and the sulphur dioxide that was belching out onto those young children. So I think it's a public duty that everyone should stand up and be counted for the good of the youth of the future.
Jennie represented her community throughout the 2-week public inquiry. The inquiry report was sent to the Secretary of State of the Environment, and the action group won. Planning permission for the power station was dismissed. This was a huge victory for the action group, but of course, the issue of the pollution remained. A pivotal moment in their campaign was securing television coverage on one of the leading shows of the day, Watchdog, which highlighted the issue to millions of viewers.
I've never seen muck in my life like the muck around here. Everything I've touched has made my fingers black. But as the people around here say, you can wash your fingers, but you can't wash your lungs. And what is this doing to their insides?
Jennie struggled for years to get an official study commissioned to understand the health impacts of living next to a coke works, to no avail. So the action group did it themselves. The huge undertaking to print, collect, deliver, and analyze the thousands of responses was yet another example of the redoubtable efforts of the action group. And the stories that came out of the survey were horrifying, substantiating everything that Jennie had feared about the terrible impact of living next to a coke works. Jennie refused to be silent, and in 1989, the action group took their case all the way to the European Parliament. This is Jennie with her daughter Barbara outside the Strasbourg headquarters. I love this particular headline because it refers to their journey as a pilgrimage, which is an appropriate metaphor for just how far they were willing to go to get justice for their town. It was Tony Benn that once said, "The progress is made because there are two flames in the human heart, the flame of anger against injustice and the flame of hope that you can build a better world." For me, this image of Jennie digging soil near her home to be sent to laboratories to analyze the level of toxins that her community was being exposed to truly embodies both her anger and her hope, with Jennie once again channeling all of her energy into getting salvation for her town. Of course, British Coal would not give up on the power station, and in 1990, they secured a second public inquiry. Their limitless funds to hire the most expensive lawyers in the land were in stark contrast to the action group, who had no money and only a matter of weeks to put together a case. And this is where Dr. Wendy Lalas comes in. She was an expert on public inquiries and town planning, and she wanted to help. She found barrister Charles Pugh to represent the action group for free, and he put together a powerful case, combining Jennie's compelling evidence with his knowledge of European Union legislation on air pollution. Once again, the inspector sided with the action group. Costly air filtration equipment was commissioned, as was an official health study. There would be a few more twists and turns, but the fate of the plant was sealed. And in 1992, Monkton Coke Works was finally demolished. In the years that followed, there remained a question mark about the contaminated land, and Jennie was closely involved in the planning around how the space would be deployed. In the year 2000, Monkton Community Woodlands and Business Park was officially opened. Today, the site is a green space that employs more people than Monkton Coke Works ever did. And that's quite a difference in view from Jennie's home. The case was a landmark in many ways. It catalyzed the creation of the Environmental Law Foundation, which today helps communities throughout the country get access to legal support in their fight for environmental justice. The use of European Union legislation on air pollution was the first of its kind in a UK case. And the community-led health surveys became the blueprint for future health studies, with Newcastle University's epidemiological report on the correlation between a coke works and the health of the nearby residents also being the first of its kind. In the mid-90s, the Evening Chronicle wrote a retrospective on the campaign, with the journalist writing, "Jennie and her fellow campaigners deserve an award for their tenacious decades-long struggle against the fumes, but you don't generally get prizes for taking on the establishment." Well, earlier this week, as part of the Northeast's Inspiring Pioneers initiative that celebrates women of the region who have inspired great change, a blue plaque was unveiled at Jennie's former home. And among the attendees were the 2 remaining members of the Hebburn Residents Action Group. We're living in a time when we're yearning for real leadership, when achieving positive change seems so difficult, and when many of us can feel powerless against the corporate and political machine at both a regional and national level. Jennie's story shows us that we have more power than we think we do. Her story reminds me of a quote from the cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead. "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Today, Jennie would have been 100 years old. It's been an honor that I could share with you the story of a fearless working-class woman who united and empowered her community and who left behind a greener and healthier future for future generations. She gave us all hope that with resourcefulness and resilience, it can be done. And just one last thing from me. Jennie was my grandma. So Grandma, if you're somehow listening in, happy centenary to you. I hope I've done you proud, and I hope you've all been inspired today. Thank you.